We're back on another episode of On the Subject. I'm your host, Michael Vilardo. We have an extremely special guest today. This is a founder, venture capitalist, consultant. She's really done it all, and she's now the founder of Black Women in Venture Capital after previously spending time at Maveron and Serena Ventures. We're so excited to have her. Welcome to the podcast, Veronica Reeves. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Michael. I'm super excited to be here. Super excited to have seen the subject journey over the last 4 years or so, and excited to continue and support in any way I can. So thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for joining us in LA. You're a new Angelino. You made the trip down the coast. What do you think so far? What surprised you about Los Angeles so far?
There's a couple of things. I think one, that the city is super culturally diverse, which I love. I've lived in DC for 11 years. I'm originally from Seattle. And so I like that it's a bit of a melting pot. I would say one thing that's surprising is that you have to go to different neighborhoods to get different types of food.
Yes.
So I'm just starting to learn that because I've lived in LA now for just a year. And growing up in Seattle, we had access to all different types of cultural food everywhere. But here you have to go to Koreatown, or you have to go, the West Side for good breakfast burritos. So
Yes.
it's interesting to see the kind of food dynamic. I love it.
Oh, food is the happiest part of life. That's why it's so hard to stay in good shape. I love food so much. It's a great time. Those meals are great bursts of joy every day. But no, I think you hit the nail on the head with Los Angeles. It's like a very large suburb. It's incredibly diverse, so many opportunities, so much creative energy, which I love. But you definitely have to go to each area for the microcosm. But you brought up you're from Seattle originally, which is an incredible city. Love Seattle. How did you end up from Seattle going to DC, going to Howard? What a move across the country. Tell us how you're able to identify Howard and what your experience was like there. It's such an incredible, iconic university. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I grew up in Tacoma, Washington, which is basically a suburb of Seattle, and it's where more of the diversity in the area. But I also grew up in a majority kind of white environment, especially in school. And so when I got to high school, a couple of friends of mine had family on the East Coast, and so they had learned about Howard. So they introduced me to the idea of Howard and this idea of an HBCU and a university where everyone looks like you. And so that really got me intrigued. And the kind of funny thing is, when I was pursuing college initially, I actually started going to school at the Art Institute of Seattle because I thought I wanted to do fashion marketing. And Howard was sort of in the back of my head, but I decided I want to do fashion marketing instead. And I went to the Art Institute for a year and realized that I was basically training to decorate stores, more or less, and maybe to be a buyer, but there's not a big fashion industry. Like, it's not really an industry in Seattle. And so I thought, I think I'm just kind of wasting money here. Let me reset and rethink. And so I actually started going to community college in Seattle.
I cannot wait for the segue. This is awesome. And I'm learning all this about Veronica, who's such a great professional. I also went to community college.
Okay.
Yeah, we're learning more. So tell us about this. I love what you already brought up, so many incredible themes. We're definitely going to get to the Howard experience shortly.
Yeah.
But you talked about, hey, you're going to this art institute, and then I know for me, I went to University of Richmond first, and it's a great school, and go Spiders, love the Spiders. I had a little bit of a panic in place where it's like, did I make the right decision? Am I able to change my decision?
Yeah.
Transferring is a painful process. Like, how did you have the courage to do that? And then the humility, and I went through it as well, to go back to community college. Talk about that.
Yeah, I think for me, my interest in higher education always stemmed from my mom. So she had started a university at the Anchorage of Alaska, met
So
my
cool.
sister's father, so her first husband, and dropped out of school. And so because of that, she's always been very passionate about whatever you do, get your 4-year degree, because she never got her 4-year degree. So I always had this in my mind that whatever I do, I need to at least get my 4-year degree. So when I was at the Art Institute of Seattle, I sort of had a panic attack, like, man, this is so expensive.
Exactly.
Like, looking at these loans that I was taking out for this program and realizing I really want a different life than what this is setting me up for. And there's not a lot of roles here in Washington. So I took a step back and said, okay, I was working as a receptionist at the time. And I knew I wanted to go to a four-year university, and my thoughts of Howard came back. And I thought, well, let me go and enroll in community college. I can start to do some of the like basic level courses and potentially transfer to Howard. So I did that. I enrolled at Seattle Community College, and then we were a quarter system. After the first quarter, I looked up the kind of syllabus and curriculum requirements for programs at Howard, decided, okay, I want to transfer, and I want to transfer into the International Business program at School of Business at Howard. What are the classes I need to take at Seattle Community College that will transfer? So I had like a manila folder that was two-sided. I printed out the scheme for the International Business major, and then I just started planning my classes at Seattle Central Community College as far as I could in advance to build out my curriculum per quarter to try and transfer as many credits over to Howard. And I was so meticulous because I didn't want to waste any time because I'd already been in school for a year at the Art Institute. So I was like, okay, let me try and get as many classes covered as I could. I would even call Howard, I remember, especially around the accounting classes, to make sure that those classes would transfer over. So that was my journey. I worked full-time and went to school full-time for 2 years. So I was taking night classes Monday through Thursday, like 6 to 9, and then I would take like a Saturday.
I did a Saturday class too, right? And you know what's something I talk about with education, and two tangential points I want to make here is, one, more people need to consider community college. It's an incredible route where you take on little to no debt.
Yeah.
You're able to engage with some incredible professors, general elections, build your general electives, build your confidence up, be able to go into college with more credits done, know what college you want to go to, be a more mature person when you step onto a four-year university.
Yeah.
And when you apply to jobs, everyone's asking you what your four-year degree is.
Yeah,
It's all about your four-year degree.
exactly.
And so that's why I think community college is one of the most underlooked option. I'm a big proponent that if you can't go to a top university, a university like Howard, etc., going to community college or trade school is an incredible option, buys you more time, and then you either go directly into the workforce or go to a top 200 university, which is a great opportunity. And so that's one big thing I want to make an emphasis here. And then secondly, and this is a question for you, when you look at how you navigated your education, it's something I think about all the time. Do you think that part of it was the meticulousness and the ability to be able to navigate messy systems educated you as much as some of the classes? Like for me, I think about all the time. I went to University of Richmond, and then I went to Harper College and McHenry County College, same time.
Yeah.
And I did the same thing as you, like, do these classes transfer, whatnot, transfer portal, applying, and those skills, the logistics, taught me as much as many, if not more, than some of the classes. And so I think about what a blessing it is. Nobody wants to go through that, but that probably taught you a lot.
No, 1,000%. I think it teaches you strategy, like what's your goal, and then how do you backtrack from that goal. And it teaches you how to navigate these complex systems that are really difficult. At least for me, I didn't know how to apply for financial aid or how to make sure my classes transfer. Most of the community college in Seattle, they feed into the public universities in the state. So there wasn't really people there who could help me. Oh, you want to go to the school in Washington, D.C.?
Pretty far away.
Yeah, exactly. You know, we've got a relationship there. They had no relationship with Howard. I think the other thing, too, is from a cost perspective, right? In high school, I took AP English classes. So I was taking some higher level courses and doing well in them. But when it came time to take the SAT, my family didn't have the money to like pay for the exam and for, a tutor and things like that. So I never even took the SAT. So for me, I looked at, well, what can I do without that? And you can, enroll in the community college, or at least at that time, I don't know if it's changed now, but you could enroll taking the SAT. And the other thing I'll say is my sister, who's 7 years older than me, she had spent a little bit of time in community college, but had gotten her four-year degree from the University of Texas, Houston, I believe. So I was able to see that was at least possible in terms of having an example. But yeah, definitely a lot of life lessons that are still applicable today.
No, and I love that. So let's talk about the experience at HBCU.
Yeah.
They've come into a lot more prominence of late in terms of the Deion Sanders effect, which is so powerful. I love what, you know, the light that's being shined on some of these programs and, the money that's being poured in. How can we continue to elevate these universities and talk about what a great experience you had?
Yeah. So I think what was really interesting to me in terms of going to Howard was like, yes, I wanted to get my 4-year degree, but I also wanted to be somewhere where when I walked in the room, intelligence was normalized and not an exception. And what
Yes.
I mean by that is, if you're black or brown in this country and you're in predominantly white educational environments or others, when you speak well or you can have good grades or whatnot, sometimes it can be seen as, oh my gosh, you speak so properly or these
Mm.
types of things. And I had teachers along the way that would help push me here and there or talk to my mom about maybe she should skip a grade or maybe she should go to this private school. So I did have people within my educational experience before college that paid attention to me. Those folks in your life, right? But what I would say is going to Howard, I wanted my blackness to be normalized.
Yes.
And so, yes, I got that at Howard, which was incredible. I think also what was something that I wasn't expecting was just this foundational adjustment of how you view yourself and your people and their accomplishments, in the sense that there's so much about Black history, not just US, but we can say like the diaspora, that gets taught or that is just normalized or shown, whether that's the name of a building, named after this
Yeah.
inventor who invented the filament and the light bulb was a Black man. Like these things that you would never know unless you either sought out that information yourself or were surrounded by it. So I walked away with just a level of confidence in my ability as a Black person in America that not everybody gets, especially with what we see in the media and kind of stereotypes perpetuated over time. And so I think that, especially coming into environments like venture capital,
Yes.
where it's majority white, gave me more confidence in my own abilities to succeed. Um, so that would be, I think, one of my like biggest takeaways from Howard. And then the last thing I'll say is, I think folks can sometimes think that an HBCU is full of like Black Americans. And actually, I have friends that I met at Howard from all over the world. It
That's so
really
cool.
is a diaspora convening in one place. So I had friends from different countries in Africa, different countries in the Caribbean that I had never heard of. Right? Like
Yeah.
I'd heard of the Dominican Republic. I've never heard of Dominica
Yeah.
before, going to Howard and meeting classmates that were from there, and just seeing that pride. So that was really special. I think in terms of continuing to support them, I mean, funding is always great. I think that enrollment increases whenever there's sort of this outcry around should we be supporting minorities or not at a country at large. And so you'll see that the HBCU's enrollments typically would increase around that time. And then if I think about going to Howard and then going to Kellogg for my grad school, which is like a PWI or predominantly white institution,
And for
the
those of you who don't know, that's Northwestern's Masters of Business Administration program. Incredible top 10 program in the country. Congrats again on that program.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, while I was there, I think because I had a couple friends that I knew from Howard. We were already friends before we were going to school there. And then there were other like Black students who hadn't gone to an HBCU in their undergrad. And what I saw was that the folks who had gone to an HBCU, we we were much more able to kind of integrate with all different groups on campus. Whereas some of the other students who hadn't gone to an HBCU, they really stuck very closely to like the Black Management Association, or they kind of stuck really closely to their, demographic group. But the Howard folks or folks who had gone to HBCUs, we sort of had that foundation already from our undergrad.
That's so cool. I love
Yeah.
these perspectives. I think, you know, being intentional about what environments you put yourself in, it affects how you grow as a person so much. And I love how intentional you were to go to Howard and what a great institution is. And, we talk about even with subject when we're helping students, if you don't see it, you can't dream it. And so we make a big intentional effort to say, currently 70% of our teachers are women or people of color. And so
Oh,
that way our
congrats.
students,
That's
thank you. Yeah, we're really
incredible.
proud of that. And
Yeah.
I think everyone, whether you're white, black, Latino, Native American, you need to be able to see folks that look like you
Yeah.
and have those role models and build the confidence up. And so I love what you brought up about confidence. Tell me how you view graduate education versus undergraduate education. And
Yeah.
I love, and again, this was news to me. You have a variety of undergraduate education that you experienced. You had the community college, the Art Institute, and Howard. What do you think graduate education versus undergraduate education plays a role in society today?
Yeah. Well, that's great. I think so. I went to an MBA program, which is very specific in the sense that there's a couple different paths you can come out kind of
Yep.
pursuing out of your MBA. And so because of that, you get almost somewhat similar archetypes of people enrolling into MBA. I never thought I would ever get my MBA. When I was at Howard,
Yeah.
I never considered
You never think you're
getting
going to go to
another.
grad school. Yeah.
Yeah.
I am so ready
I
to be
got my
done.
4-year
Yes,
degree. Like, if you
exactly.
ask me,
I'm going to
that's
go
my
have
greatest
fun. And
achievement.
well,
Yeah.
actually, I want to ask something about that because I ended up doing my MBA as well, but I thought the same thing. And then I'm kind of kicking myself when I'm applying, like, oh, I wish I would have tried harder and got a better GPA in undergrad. How do you actually recognize what your career path is as young as possible? It's so hard. Like these
You
young
have
people,
no
you have
idea.
no idea. I remember I wanted to go to law school, and
Yeah.
I go to the Penn Law,
Now you have your own
immigration.
school.
Well, that's true. Thank you. I love having my own school to be able to help a lot of students. So Penn Law, info session, it's like you need a 3.8 to apply. You're like, well, that's out the window. Thankfully, MBA is a little bit more about your career, your
Right.
storytelling.
Right.
But still, whereas if you don't go to grad school, I think about it with subject. I don't think I've ever once asked for or looked for a GPA from college for
Okay.
our applicants.
Yeah.
However, if you're going to grad school, your undergraduate GPA is very important. Isn't it interesting how different parts of society value different things?
It is interesting. I think that I was a bit of a nerd in school.
That's a great thing. Nerds around the world.
Me
We
and
always say,
friends,
yeah.
there was like 4 of us, and we would compete who could get the highest test
Oh, it's
score.
amazing.
We called ourselves, I shouldn't say this, but we called ourselves the A Brigade. It's very embarrassing.
I love. We're learning
Really?
so much today.
Quite tragic.
Yeah.
But so I was focused on trying to just get the best grades ever. I think because
It's a
I
good
knew I had
focus.
to get a good job after
Yeah.
school. I didn't have a safety net. My mom was in and out of homeless shelters at that time back in Seattle. So I really was on my own. And so I, picked business because I was interested in business. My mom was an entrepreneur and I was a kid growing up. But also I picked business and studied business because I wanted to get a good job.
And you got a great job. You got Deloitte, right?
Yeah, so I
That's
joined
amazing.
Deloitte. And I remember because junior year, that summer, or was it sophomore year going into junior, everybody in the School of Business at Howard, a lot of folks had internships.
Yep.
And me and my other friend who were doing really well in class had no internships. And we thought, well, what's going on? We completely missed the boat here. We really have to step it up for next year. And I had gone to an info session with Deloitte. And I think I had like a 3.5 GPA. So it wasn't bad, but it wasn't like a 4.0 or
Yeah.
something. And the guy, so nice, Stephen Moyo, he said, look, you need basically a 3.9 to be a summer
Wow.
analyst here at Deloitte. But to get a full-time job, you just need like a 3.6 or something. And you need a Fortune 500 internship on your resume. So I said, okay, great. So that, fall, I did all the info sessions, did a bunch of interviews, and got a couple offers, like one from GM and then one from ConocoPhillips at the time, which I think was like a Fortune 7 company before it split into 2. And so I took ConocoPhillips. And so I was like, okay, I've got, my Fortune 500 internship on my resume and I have a good GPA. So then I applied for a full-time role, ended up getting it.
Wow.
But then going to Deloitte, I was in this class of 13 or so of us that started at the same time. And these are folks who came from like really great
It
schools.
was a really hard
right?
job to get. Deloitte's
Really hard,
top
really
consulting
hard
firm.
job to get. And then, so then I learned like, oh, a lot of wealthy people's kids who work here. Like,
That is for sure true.
right? Like
Yeah.
we just had the access and the quality education to kind of build that resume, if you will, prior to joining Deloitte Consulting. And because I was there, that's where I saw people starting to go get their MBAs, where it was like, oh, you're 2 years. Once you get to 2 years, you kind of get your MBA and then you come back. And that's where I
Yeah.
got introduced to this idea of getting an MBA. And at first, I learned about MLT, Management Leadership
Nice.
Tomorrow, where they have an MBA or like an MBA prep program for folks, for minority folks, which was really informative. They take you to visit different schools. They have coaches who help you and all of these things at a much discounted rate if you were to try and pay for this
Yep.
type of thing on your own. And what's the MBA?
GMAT?
The GMAT. I took it like 4 times or something.
It's a brutally hard test.
Oh man, that exam was so hard. I could get like a 660, 670 on my at-home test, but I like couldn't break like a 630, 640 testing.
It's a stressful time.
It was very stressful.
And then they give you the score back immediately.
Right.
Say, right. Exactly. You're literally the happy or fresh, like, I don't gotta get. No, so a couple things there that I love that you said, and I think we talk about education. You know, our goal from a first principle mindset with education is find the most fulfilled, self-sustainable career possible for you and your family as early as possible. We're here to help fill your dreams. You know, you got bills to pay, life is expensive, but we want you to be happy and find something that you truly love and skills that you're great at. But then if you look at it from a more, direct utilitarian way, there's 2 aspects. One, to learn, which is super powerful. I think a lot of people lose sight of this, especially kids, because they view it more as a chore. And naturally, when you're a student, it's more of a chore. You want to go hang out with your friends. You want days off. You want sports, plays, whatever. But it's learn to learn. The second piece, and you did a really great job articulating it, is backwards engineering your next stop. So you talked about Deloitte. You said, hey, Deloitte, I need to get a 3.9 to get an internship, or a 3.5 to get, or 3.6, excuse me, to get a full-time role, plus a Fortune 500 internship. I'm going to go get that. So let's bring it back to high school now. In theory, and I don't believe enough kids look at it this way because, they're 14, 15, they're pretty young, but it affects your life. Your high school experience is about getting to the best college for you possible.
Yeah.
But not a lot of folks realize, I mean, you're 14, 15, you're worried about what some boy or girl thinks about you, making the sports team, like the hangout on the weekend plans. How would you go about being a young person today? It's a pretty challenging time. Social media is in your face.
Gosh, I just would hope that I'd have the same pressure or importance placed on education.
Education's everything.
Yeah. My grandmother is 93 now.
Wow, that's awesome.
She got her undergraduate degree at like 78 or something.
I love that.
Yeah. So, I think a lot of the folks in my family have a lot of my aunts. So my grandmother had 7 children, 6 women, 1 male, and all of the women, including my mom, area.
Oh, nice. It's amazing.
Yeah, and they all have their undergraduate degrees,
So
outside
cool.
of my mom. And so it's, as a family, it was just like a focus. And so I would hope that would still be the case if I were in school now. I think it just would be really hard. I think I'd have to try and shut out a lot of the noise, especially with social media and
It's
like
tough.
being able to see every level of people's lives. I mean, it's even challenging today where the comparison and what am I doing in my life that I shouldn't be doing or should be doing based on what other people are doing that I see on Instagram or TikTok.
The FOMO is tough. It's
Exactly.
stressful.
So
But
I think maybe being, really diligent about kind of shutting things out, shutting out noise.
Focus is key. But I mean, clearly you did a lot right because you got into venture capital, which is arguably the most coveted career because it's such an incredible intersection of finance, entrepreneurship, sales, marketing strategy. It's everything rolled into one.
Yeah.
And it's some of the most brilliant people in the world, in the venture capital space. But it's almost a cottage industry in that there's very few roles available. Very few roles. Maybe one full-time role every 2 to 3 years at the top firms, which is pretty wild to think about. I would love to talk about that. You were at some of the top firms in the world. You were at Maveron and Ventures, which is an incredible firm, one of the top consumer firms. And then you worked directly for Serena Williams, the greatest tennis player of all time,
Yeah.
an iconic athlete. How did you break into venture capital? What happened there? How did you figure it out?
Yeah. So I learned about venture capital as an industry in 2016, 2017 or so. I was volunteering with founders at accelerators in DC, and these were accelerators that focused on minority founders. And I would ask them, what's your biggest challenge? And their response was, I can't.
Raising capital stuff. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
really
yeah.
hard to raise VC dollars. And I would think, well, why? Why is it so hard? You have a really great business plan, you're earning revenue, your company's growing, you're super intelligent. Like, this doesn't make any sense to me. And then looked at the numbers, which we all know, which have been true since that period of time, which is about 1% or less go to Black and brown founders, of about $300 billion invested in US startups every year. And I thought, wow. And at the time, I was actually interviewing to work in an accelerator because I knew I wanted to work with
Which
startups at
accelerator?
that point. 1863 with Melissa Bradley in
Very
DC.
cool.
Yeah, so I was interviewing with her, and she had become like a mentor and everything at that point. And I was talking with the founders, and I thought maybe I could try and break into venture capital if I was on the funding side of the table. Maybe I could have more impact. And because at that point, I'd been in consulting for 4 years. I'd worked at an ed tech startup for a year in Africa, helping to launch that
Wow,
business.
that's awesome.
And so I was like, I have some startup
Yeah.
experience. I didn't know that like startup versus Silicon Valley startup experience is valued differently. So there's that. But I learned that over time. So I have startup experience. I've been a consultant and I researched. So I went online and I said, well, let me look at the backgrounds of VCs.
Yep.
And so I saw that they were some of them had consulting backgrounds, far fewer. More of them had banking backgrounds.
A lot of
but
bankers and
a lot of
MBAs.
yeah, a lot of bankers, a lot of MBAs. So I
A
thought,
lot of Stanford, Harvard, Wharton MBAs.
exactly. That's exactly right.
Yep.
And
And
so I thought, let me try going and getting my MBA and interning at some VC funds and seeing if that will help me break in. And so you asked me, like, how did I break in? I did something similar to what I did for Howard, where I kind of looked at their roles
Yep.
and then basically did a gap analysis and said, what in my background am I missing? I didn't have any venture experience. I didn't have an MBA. And I wasn't focused on finance at Deloitte. I was on strategy and operations. So I thought I could get the finance experience. So I went through a round of applying to schools. I applied to like the Stanford,
Yep.
Wharton, Yale. Didn't get into any of them.
I didn't get any of
Because
them.
I think
Don't
my
worry.
final GMAT score was like a 630 or something. And so I couldn't get into any of those. Like, okay. Maybe I can just break in by just working at accelerators, like,
Yeah.
trying to network my way in. And then a friend of mine told me about Kellogg, like, Veronica,
Unbelievable school. Go
check out
Chicago.
Kellogg.
Chicagoan. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a good school at Northwestern. And this was like a year later. And so I said, okay, fine. I will apply to Kellogg. But if I don't get in, I'm not going to grad school. Because for me, I knew, or at least I felt very strongly, and this isn't necessarily the case today because there's more kind of on-ramping programs into venture that you can take whether you're an MBA student or not. But at the time, these didn't exist. So I was like, if I don't go to a top 10 school, it's going to be really hard to break into venture because most of these people went to
Well,
Stanford
and it's
or
the fact of the
Wharton.
matter. And I think, the world is never going to be fair, and that's how it is. And education isn't fair, but it is a great equalizer. But
Yeah,
I love how you outline, top 10 school. It's just a fact of the game. We don't make the rules. We play by the rules. Obviously, we want to influence change, and
right.
that's what I love about you. You are so passionate, and it's infectious. And I appreciate everything you're doing for the space, and so many incredible founders. But it's so true. I mean, I believe it's 60 or 70% of at least the top funds, but if not all venture capital comes from those 3 MBA programs, which is great to know that you backwards engineer your way towards that. And, for all our, especially high school listeners out there, identify the colleges you want to go to early and look at the application requirements, look at what's needed, look at the classes you want to take, be meticulous, do the gap
Mhm.
analysis like Veronica, this brilliant way to think, bring it to your application process. It's amazing. But bringing it back to the venture capital break-in,
Yeah.
that was incredible. I love how you broke in there. The piece around being able to sustain success in venture capital is very interesting too. They
Yeah.
say a lot of, funds have a lot of difficulty raising a second fund.
Yeah.
Now you've been able to be at 2 top venture capital firms, and now you've actually started your own network. This is the coolest thing, everybody. Black Women in Venture Capital. Tell us what you're doing for that community and what you started there.
Yeah. So to finish the breaking
Yeah.
into Maveron piece, I'll just share that quickly because it is related
Yes.
to Black Women in Venture Capital. But I picked kind of my top firms that I would love to work for, and Maveron was actually like Maveron
It's
was
an
my dream
incredible
fund.
fund and
I was
full
like, oh
consumer
my
focus. I
gosh.
love
Yeah,
that.
consumer focus, Series A. I had a couple of specific things that I was looking for. And I think as the students think about what schools they're going to, they can think through what are your kind of top 3, what are your
Yep.
wish list things.
Yes.
But for me, what was really important was, is there an investor who's been investing at this fund for more than 10 years? Because
I like
VC
that.
is such
Long-term
an
focus.
apprentice model. It would be hard for me to learn from someone who's been in the field for a couple of years. He's
They
just
haven't
not
seen the
long
highs and
enough.
lows. They haven't.
Exactly.
Yeah, they haven't.
Exactly. And so Maveron had like 3 investors who had been there for 10 years plus, with the oldest being, in terms of his level of experience, the founder, Baton, been investing for
He's
26
incredible.
years. He's incredible. And then I was like, do they have a woman investor? Because if they do, there could be, gender dynamics.
Yeah.
I know that they appreciate gender diversity.
Yeah.
And was it like the stage and focus that I wanted? So that was, a lot of hustling, trying to get contacts at Maveron, going to San Francisco, networking, all these things. And then everything just sort of kind of lined up when they publicly posted a role for the first time in the fund's history in June. And I was graduating in June. So I think I got the role after applying. It was along with like 3. But they hired me and one other person out of like 400 applicants. So that was like a dream come true.
That's
and I was
unbelievable.
so stoked. And I joined in October of 2020. It's the depth of the pandemic.
Yep.
I'm working remotely. I'm not really seeing my team except on Zoom once a week. And that is incredibly lonely.
It is so lonely.
Yeah, a lot of VC work. Yes, you're meeting with founders constantly, but a lot of those meetings are first meetings. So you're meeting new people all the time, and you're working with your team, a couple hours, maybe a week. So it can just be like a lonely job in general. And also I was trying to learn how to do the job, right? It's an apprenticeship model. And because everyone is trying to invest or find the next best deal, there may not be a lot of apprenticing actually happening at your firm.
Yeah, there's some scarcity mindset there for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was like grasping for air and thought, well, let me find other Black women in VC who I can just talk to about all the things I'm experiencing. And Maveron said to me, like, Veronica, make sure you start building a network. That's really important. I was like, great. This will help me build a network and it'll fulfill my loneliness. And so I started just organizing events, virtual events. It was a group of 4 of us for the first one, which Maveron supported, which was great. We did a virtual holiday cocktail making class, and we all loved it. And I said, well, let's do this again. Everybody add 1 more person to the invite. We'll do another activity.
Yeah.
We did a tea tasting with Brooklyn Tea Company, which I actually just used them again kind of 4 years or 3 years later, which is really cool to kind of see that full circle. But they're a Black-owned tea company based in Brooklyn. They have 2 locations now, Brooklyn and Atlanta. And they'll do these virtual tea tastings. So they'll send the tea tasting kit to your house. You'll hop online with the founders, husband and wife team, and they'll walk you through a really fun tea tasting. So anyway, a little plug for them. But did that and started a WhatsApp group, turned it into 45 people. And I thought, well, I can't expense anything for 45 people. Maveron will say no. And also, I can't manage a WhatsApp group. So I thought, let's transition to Slack. And if I formalize into a nonprofit, I can fundraise for sponsorship, following or looking at similar models like Black VC, which is a nonprofit organization, or All Raise, both communities and professional development training organizations within venture capital. And so, it's like what we do in venture. What's the playbook, right? Like, what did this organization do that worked well? What can I glean and learn from that? What didn't go well? What can I glean and learn from that? And how can I apply it to what I'm trying to build here? So formalizing into a nonprofit, did that. and fundraised. And for our first retreat, which was in person in 2021, did it in Martha's Vineyard.
That's
It
amazing.
was so cool. And then this year, we're, doing our third retreat, and we've grown from 45 people. We have 340 members
Wow, that's awesome.
of Black women in investing roles across, from analysts all the way through to GP. And I run programming across 3 core pillars where I saw a need, because once I got into venture, there wasn't really any resources.
No.
There was the how to break in, but there wasn't like, now you're in. What
Yeah,
do you
how
do
do you
next?
stay
Yeah, how
successful,
do you
happy, fulfilled?
exactly.
Yeah,
How do
no,
you
it's
progress in your career? All of that. And so I was like, well, I'll just cobble and piece it together and try to I really believe in sharing knowledge and collaboration. And so we have 3 pillars as an organization. The first is connect. That's all about safe space and community. The second is learn. How do you accelerate your learning curve? How do you stay happy in your role? That sort of thing. And then the third is collaborate. So partnering with organizations, partner with AWS, Morgan Stanley, and others to help bring programming to my members. And, while I was at Maveron, one of the things I was able to witness was just the power of Dan Leviton's network. If we were
yep.
diligencing a company in real
You
estate,
could ask anyone
he would
for
call this
the
expert in
cold
real
references are the
estate.
best.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh, he was so good. And I'm just like, that's incredible. Or he'd have, Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs, someone come in and do like a public markets update for our team. Spend an hour with us talking about what do we think the IPO market's going to look like for the rest of the year. And it just helps you be a better investor. And so I brought those types of things to my members. And so, yeah, continuing to grow that. The mission is to 10x the number of Black women check writers, because the thesis is that the more Black women we have investing in VC, the more equitable it will be for all founders.
I love that. And,
Yeah.
I'm so moved by everything you stand for. And that's the biggest way that I would want to end this incredible conversation is, you mentioned plug for the Brookline Tea Company.
Yeah.
What's the plug for Black women in venture capital? Yeah, like where can we find you? How can people join?
Yeah.
And, what do you want to accomplish over the next couple of years? I love the mission statement and I'm a huge supporter.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, you can find us at BWIVC.org. And if you are a Black woman or identify as Black, non-gender conforming, you can apply, which is a very simple application found right there on the website. And then we also have this year a limited partner training program that I'm leading, which is taking 15 high net worth individuals and providing them with a personal investment thesis and a diligence frameworks around how can they get comfort in investing in fund managers or diverse fund managers, right? And so in terms of what helps BWIVC is if you have knowledge, resources, or you want to support us from a sponsorship or fundraising perspective as a nonprofit, you can reach out to me. I'm just Veronica at bwivc.org. And then in terms of the kind of big vision, the goal is to continue building out the platform. So can I build the world's largest network of Black women professionals and create this platform and flywheel such that, if you're an operator or a founder and you're looking to find an investor, you can come here and you can find that easily. If you're an operator who wants to become a GP, like Stacey Brown Philpott, who's the former CEO of TaskRabbit.
Oh, she's amazing.
A member.
She's unbelievable.
And
yeah.
she took her journey from operator to then GP. If those people are already in contact, involved within this network and see that, to your point around knowledge is power and seeing
Yes.
yourself or seeing someone like you doing something,
You gotta see
then
it to
the
dream
more
it.
of you will want to do it. The same thing from a founder perspective. So the idea is to build out that platform and then have my own fund that would then invest in Black women fund managers and diverse founders at Series A, like direct investing, Series A, Series B.
And that's also a shout out there. We're so lucky to have you, Veronica. This is an incredible episode of On the Subject. Everyone out there listening, backwards engineer your next stop. Look for the gaps, understand how you can get there, and really always be focused on impact. And that's what I love about Veronica here. And so we're looking forward to another episode soon. Thank you so much, everyone. That is On the Subject with Michael Vilardo. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.